place we can post that stuff on our county website.
Yep. That's not, all right.
Everybody goes like
Yes. Let's give him just
Here's a buzz.
1 more minute here. And see.
Oh, it is you.
I don't.
Okay.
You can drive.
Come on, buddy. What are you doing?
Thank you.
Got it.
It was a little
Got it
tougher.
figured out.
Oh, yeah. That was the one you were telling me was gonna start.
Yeah. That was it. It was,
I just need to keep an eye in case more folks. So,
yeah,
okay,
kids weren't ready for that level yet.
let's kick this off.
Can we do the intros?
Yes, let's do introductions. Let's start over here.
I'm Ryan Bailey. I'm with Harney County Economic Development.
Nice to meet you, Ryan.
Oh, Joe Fresnell, I'm with Rural Prosperity Partners. I'm sorry, and normally I would be up greeting everybody, but we were dealing with all of the technology, and so sorry, but really good to be here in person. I live in Hermiston. Commissioner Dora asked, where actually are you from? And so I'm northeastern Oregon, so I'm a Yankee, and but glad to be here in southeastern Oregon. It is fantastic here. I love it. I was driving through, I was going, maybe I should sell my house that I just built. Move to Harney County.
Awesome. I'm Rachel. Really also glad to be here. It is so nice to see the sun. So I'm normally based in Corvallis.
Oh, yeah.
Willamette Valley this time of year starts just being gray.
The webs in your fingers get.
Yeah. We're drying out over here, so it's nice. I'm glad to be here.
I'm Patty Darrow, Harney County Commissioner, and I work closely with Rural Prosperity Partners, and I just really appreciate all of you coming, and you're going to be a big part of this if and when we move forward. But we have a rapid design study that we'll get to see today that I think will be really interesting to all of us, and maybe to help coalesce the BAT members who haven't come on board to possibly get more involved in the future. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Justin Chase with MyWave, just doing everything we can to get fiber to everybody out here. That's really all we can do.
Yep, Jeff Graham with MyWave, and same thing, what he said.
What he said.
Brandon McMullen, I'm the County Planning Director.
Nice to see you, Brandon.
Yeah. Nice to see you. And then we've got some on the phone. Brenda, I think you're our Brenda.
Hey, yep, I'm Brenda Orzlak. I'm with Oregon Trail Electric Cooperative. I'm based out of the Baker City office, but we serve into Harney County as well. So I'm sorry I couldn't be there this morning. I've got other commitments, but it's nice to meet you all.
Wonderful,
Awesome.
thanks. And Bryce?
Yeah, good morning. Bryce Mertz, Harney County GIS.
Fantastic. Well, we've got all the right folks in the
And we
room.
got planning and we got GIS and we got an ISP.
It's getting.
I know,
And
that's
And
awesome.
rapid design study life will be good.
I get to see Brenda. I bug the daylights out of her with emails and stuff. So.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I don't know about you all, but it's like I'm still coming off of COVID. I'm still meeting a lot of people in person for the first time, folks that I've had related,
Yeah.
like colleagues for 3 years. And it's like, oh, you're a lot taller or
I know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Oh, you're not in your pajamas today. Okay, great. Wow.
So our agenda today was, we're trying to juggle all the screens here, so I don't have the agenda up for you all today, but we will do the rapid design study at 9. So Glenn and Nancy, the team that we work with, will be coming in then. But we're gonna do our regular updates, so Oregon Broadband office updates. Now, Seth was supposed to be here from the OBO, but he came down with the flu. So, and then we'll talk about state funding updates, any OBAC council, so Oregon Broadband Advisory Council updates. Thanks for the coffee this morning, I'll get there. Federal updates, and then talking about kind of like positioning the county for funding. And then a little bit about digital inclusion that we can potentially work on as a team together, and then talking about how the county wants to kind of position themselves and their role in going after the funding and in partnerships. So that's kind of the scoop for today. Does that work for everybody? And is there anything that we've left out that you're like dying to know about? Okay. All right. So Joe, you want to kick us off?
Yes. So, and I'm sorry, well, maybe it's a blessing for those of you who are on the video call, that you can't see me because I'm showing the room with my camera. And I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow, through the, it's this whole thing.
They see you
So
from a distance.
it's from a distance.
Yeah.
There you go. I'll wave. I sent out recently a couple of white papers from Rural Prosperity Partners that we put together for you so that you wouldn't have to dig through, unless you just wanted to, the pages and pages and pages and pages of stuff that the Broadband Office put out. The first one is our summary and some recommendations, and I'll go through it fairly quickly, of the notice of proposed rulemaking that was put out by Oregon Business Development Department and on the broadband fund. So this is how they're going to administer the broadband fund. And I think it's a 20-page document, and I summarized it, I think, into 4, so that's as condensed as I could get it, baby.
Can I just jump in for a second? The important thing too on that is the broadband fund is the mechanism through which all of the funding is going to flow. It is one of the reasons why you're just seeing the notice of proposed rulemaking now is because of House Bill 3201 made some changes to how the fund was basically managed, because previously there were some things in there, including a standard of 25.3 that we know is just completely outdated. So it gives the OBO more, House Bill 3201 gave the OBO more ability to be flexible as times change and needs change. And so it's what all the money is flowing through.
Quick question, the NPR of the, but was it, you're mentioning broadband fund, is that separate from the CPF, right? Because the broadband fund is there's the BEAD side of it, right?
No, broadband.
Or is that including both CPF and also
So the legislature built the broadband fund before we had any money.
Okay.
And they designated that all monies that were going to go through the broadband office.
Okay, so it's all projects.
Have to flow
Gotcha.
through the broadband
Gotcha.
fund.
Okay.
It's the technical assistance money,
ARPA, everything.
Right, all of, that's what I was, yeah, that's what I was
All
asking,
of
yeah.
that goes
Okay.
through the broadband.
Perfect, thank you.
And, and a little bit of, and Rachel alluded to this, a little bit of the background on that. Senate Bill 1603, which came out in 2020, actually had some provisions in it that were really favorable to the incumbent providers and were anti-competitive in nature. So as a state, we had to fix that in order to be able to receive the BEAD funds.
Gotcha.
So the NTIA overtly said, unless you fix Senate Bill 1603, we're likely not to give you the $680 million.
Right.
And so that's what House Bill 3201 did.
That's the one that we were waiting on during the summertime.
Right.
Yeah.
That fixed the broadband fund so that the NTIA would say, okay, now you're in compliance with federal law, you're in compliance with any competitive measure, all of the good stuff that we want in Oregon. They got rid of there's a right of first refusal. I mean, it was Senate Bill 1603 was icky. And so we got that all fixed. And so that's the background. And so this notice of proposed rulemaking is how are they going to, in general, move funds through the broadband fund, okay, out into Oregon to make things happen. And I'll give you kind of an overarching thing. This is in general. Some programs like BEAD may have specific requirements that will be different than the NPRM. So the NPRM is, if we can just wave a magic wand, this is how we want to do it. But they even say in here, if there are specific requirements for a federal fund, where we're receiving monies, we're going to defer to that, which we would.
But if, say, as an example, in the future, a year or 2 years from now, next budget cycle, the state legislature says we have an extra 100 million we want to throw into there, it would fall under the rules for the
It
current
would fall under
PRM.
these general rules
Yeah.
that are
depending on,
outlined.
yeah.
Unless they targeted it, obviously.
Unless they had,
Of course.
and if they had specific, so each program under the broadband fund has, general, I'm sorry, got one more person joining us. Yeah, general rules, and then if it's, there's
Gotcha.
specific.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why today we're gonna go over two papers. The one is the NPRM, which is kind of the general rules, and then there's the BEAD proposal volume 1, which covers certain segments of the requirements for BEAD. And that's why it's volume 1. It's not gonna be, it's not all inclusive for BEAD. There's gonna be more coming. Volume 2 is coming out soon. We'll go over those because BEAD is gonna have some of its own rules.
Gotcha.
So.
And really, part of, you have a lot of value to us, and one of them is the fact that you summarized it into 4 pages and all that stuff. I really appreciate it. When you sent that out, I was like, oh, I went to see how many pages, oh, that's not too bad.
It's not bad.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I could have pared it down a little bit more because I cut and pasted some stuff in there, but I thought if you're just gonna read 4 pages, if that's all you're gonna use as a reference, then this is, if I were you, this is what I would want to have in front of me. And so there are some things in there that we don't comment on, but we included them in our summary because they're, I think, valuable to you. So.
Yeah, and while we're digging into the weeds just because, with all the broadband money coming in, you really do have to understand the background and the framework of it to figure out why we're all doing what we're doing right now. So yeah, I'll pass it over to you. And then we've got about 10 minutes. We may need to break at some point.
Sure, you just
came in. Yep.
I can pause.
No, you're good. You got 12 minutes. Go.
Whenever we're ready. And I can also talk forever. So those of you who have seen, so I was the chairman of the Oregon Broadband Advisory Council for 12 years. I was on the council for 13 years in total, representing rural Oregon. So been really involved in all of this for a very long time. Stepped out of that role in March of last year after 13 years of volunteer work with the state. And now I'm doing this really cool work, which is a lot of fun. So the NPRM notice of proposed rulemaking is open for comments right now. And so you can actually comment on this, and we would encourage you to, any and all of you, to actually look at our comments, which we sent out. If you didn't get a copy of it, just let Commissioner Dora or Rachel or I know. If you've got mine or Rachel email, I'm Joe Fresnel. Just send it to me. I'll send it to you directly. You don't have to go through the commissioner to get it. But if you don't have our emails handy, you can go through the commissioner and she can get it to us, and we'll get this to you. So the last day and time to offer comment on this notice proposed rulemaking is the 23rd at 5 p.m. So it's pretty quick. It took us a little while to summarize it, but it's out, and you guys have had it for a few days, but you still have some time to comment. It goes through, and in the summary paragraph, it talks about some of the stuff that we just talked about with the different funds that this will actually support: ARPA, BEAD, BTAP, BDP, anything that's going to flow through there is so if it's not stated specifically for that program, like we talked about with BEAD, and we'll talk about that in a second, it's going to fall under these rules. So really like the challenge process in this set of rules, the notice of proposed rulemaking. There was a knockdown, drag out fight at the state level over the challenge process. And some of the incumbents, not all of them, are bad players. And sometimes we even paint just broad strokes the private sector in bad light. And that is not true. There are so many companies out there who are doing unbelievable work in rural Oregon and who are really, really good partners for their communities. So, but there are a few who just are not good. And
those knowing chuckle over there.
Yeah,
I'm trying
to. We saw some shenanigans with challenge process and some of the early stuff with COVID, and the challenge process was used as a weapon by, and this is the risk in a challenge process where it's used as a weapon by a competitor or a new entrant into the market, someone who is trying to actually take over a market or prevent funds from flowing into a market when they're needed. And so bad challenges have happened in our state. So, morning.
Good morning.
So this challenge process actually, and you'll see this in the BEAD proposal volume 1. The BEAD proposal volume 1, the challenge process is not as great, but it's kind of dictated by the NTIA. So I really wish that the NTIA would allow us to adopt this challenge process, because in this challenge process, the burden of proof of a challenge is on the challenger. So if you want to go out and challenge a grant application and say, no, there's really, gigabit synchronous at that house that's 43 miles out there up a canyon, and so you shouldn't give the grant to Modeling. You shouldn't do that. Well, under these rules, that challenger would have to prove that that service is available out there. Under the BEAD proposal volume 1, I'll give you a little head start on that, a little preview. The burden of proof ends up falling on the internet service provider. And why we're concerned about that, and why we should strongly support the challenge process in this notice of proposed rulemaking, is it actually prevents a bad, and I'm really trying to choose my words carefully so I don't get myself.
Prevents bad actors.
Anti-competitive actions.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
derailing the whole system.
Yeah.
So anyway, we support the challenge process. We're excited about the challenge process in the MPRM. Eligible applicants, basically everybody, municipalities, federally recognized Indian tribes in Oregon, intergovernmental organizations and nonprofit organizations. For-profit entities may also be eligible applicants for a broadband program if specifically authorized by applicable state statute or rule. And so they allowed for private sector to be involved. And I'll tell you up front, some of our programs, they're actually giving additional points if there's a public-private partnership, because the state recognizes the strength of that kind of a proposal. The department refuses to or reserves the right to withhold or revoke eligibility. And I love this because they're putting in the rules teeth to allow them to enforce their rules, so they can withhold or revoke eligibility from an applicant at its sole discretion for reasons including, now when they say including, that means this is not the comprehensive list. If they find that somebody is really misbehaving and who's applying for an application, applying for a grant, they can withhold or revoke eligibility. Non-performance under a prior contract, delinquency of tax or fees owed to the state, final determination of failure or refusal to comply with state or federal regulations or standards, pending legal action, abuse of grant or loan process, such as submitting meritless challenges against other applicants. I love this. I heard the hallelujah chorus well up in the background when I read that. Willful misrepresentations made within an application submitted to the department or correspondence, lacking the legal authority or ability to execute a financial contract with a department. Those things are all in there. So we really support that. You'll see that comment in there as well.
And it's just as important. So one of the things I want to just really quickly call out is like rural prosperity partners in general, we're not going to submit the comments. That's really something that the entities around this table need to do, because you all have, like, you submitting it has more power and more teeth to it than us submitting it. And I think it's just as important to call out the things that don't work, but it's also really important to call out the things that we do approve of in these things, because it just gives the OBO more reason to finalize this sort of stuff. And one of the things that we found is that it's really important for communities and community entities to speak up, because you do sometimes get larger, again, not all are bad actors, but the some larger incumbents who are, kind of have a strong voice in the room. So we have to have other strong voices in the room as well that are community oriented. So.
One of the just mind-blowing powers of the broadband action teams across the state is the voice that we have created. Whereas before, there was no voice for the average person in Oregon. And that's these grassroots organizations that sprang up during COVID have changed the dynamic of the conversation in a way that none of us, I think, really even foresaw. Before, it was just the lobbyists for the associations and for the individual companies. Those were the voice of telecommunications. The Broadband Advisory Council tried to provide a voice of reason, but we were 13 people meeting once a month. And so you might have 10 lobbyists lined up to testify and then one representative from the Broadband Advisory Council. And so that voice was not. Now we've got, and Rachel has had the privilege of being involved at the state level, representing all of the BATs across the state. So it's the majority of the counties in our state are represented by these grassroots organizations, which is fantastic. So we got 2 more minutes before so I'll get back to this, but really, really glad that you guys have a broadband action team. So ineligible use or activities, and I'll probably pause right after this, which will be halfway through the paper. You can't pay for materials bought to resell to a broadband project at a profit. You can't pay for costs. This is the big one. And the rest of them I'll let you read, but you cannot pay for costs incurred to a broadband program grant or loan application award date prior to. So, and I see a typo in there, and I apologize. I misspelled comment. So ding me, boss, later. She's docking my pay as we speak. So we have to be wise in how we spend money in the planning leading up to a grant application, because we're not going to be able to recoup those expenses prior to the grant award, okay? And, in most of the counties, most of the BATs, some of them are economic development regions. They have been very good about getting EDA grants. Rural Prosperity Partners has been involved in helping to get EDA grants for several of the BATs out there. And so we've been able to fund a lot of these activities that lead us up to being able to actually apply for the grant. And that's what we're doing right now. But we have to be aware that you can't get reimbursed for that. So that was when we actually fought to try and get some of those retroactive costs rolled into the grant. And they were just like, no, there's not enough. And I actually think it was too much work. So and I'll pause here if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just take a quick pause, and I want to introduce Glenn and Nancy from Breaking Point Solutions. So we work with Glenn and Nancy across the state. They work across the US as well. And so the rapid design study that has been done for the county is it's the feasibility and financial analysis that we all needed like 3 years ago to understand what was going on, but now we actually get them. And it is a living tool, and it's really going to help us figure out, what is the county best positioned for when it comes to all of the funding, where are the gaps, who are potential partners. So Glenn and Nancy, I am going to turn it over to you guys. Glenn, I will give you permission to share, but yeah, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hello.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Nancy. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Nancy DeGidio with Breaking Point Solutions, and I am more on the operations side, and I work directly with Glenn on everything we do. It's nice to meet you all.
And I'm Glenn Fishbein. I'm going to be your master of ceremonies for the feasibility study that will be presenting to you right about now. So just to give you a sense of some of the background, we kind of lost count of how many studies we've done, somewhere north of 250. We've done a lot of these, and we can basically take a look at virtually any part of the United States and get a very, very good picture as to what the opportunities and what the problems are within a particular community. And we've sort of standardized on what we're seeing right now, a rapid design study, which is a web-based summary of all the information that we think is relevant for a county, or in your case, your county. And the variations on this is that, of course, every county or region is unique. And what we're trying to figure out is, what can you actually get done given the amount of money that appears to be available to you? What are your strong points? What are your weak points? Who are your potential partners? And how much can be afforded for that particular thing? Bringing broadband to the community as a whole. So there's a number of things that are in this study. For this group, I'm not going to go through all the excruciating detail. I'm just going to highlight some of the more relevant points of the county, and point to some of the strategies that we think are very, very positive, given that you're in a very negative scenario. So the first thing that I want to kind of get you a sense for is the state of the county as it is today. And on the rapid design study, if you see a bold underline, it's a link that's either going to download a file or it's going to bring up another display. So when you press on that one, we're bringing up a map of the county. And it's a rather simple yet complicated map. It's got several ways of looking at things. You can see the critical infrastructure that's within BEAD fundable areas. These are essentially the unserved and underserved locations for your county based on the latest FCC fabric information. Now that will change over time. There will be, at some point in time, the state of Oregon is going to have to freeze a particular FCC release, and that'll be what the funding ultimately comes from into the counties. At this time, we've seen very few changes over the last several months, so this is probably very close to what the final will be. So what you can see from this map initially is you see these little icons here, and these are your critical infrastructure elements. That's your Druzy Elementary School. We have down here somewhere, we've got some medical facilities. We've got the Burns Fire Department, and what is this? Thrifty Payless Pharmacy. So essentially, those are what we would think of as critical infrastructure, and it also is a little bit noisy, so we can make it go away. And then what we're basically left with is how many unserved or underserved broadband serviceable locations are there? And we can see there's a very small set cluster in this region here and here, and the rest of it is pretty sparse. So another way we can look at that is in terms of the NTIA funding. We can type the letter 5, and now we're looking at the percent of unserved, underserved through the county. And that provides us with a much more vivid picture. Essentially, where you don't have service, you really don't have service. And that's most of the areas that we've identified here. Now, one of the things that also is sitting here in this particular map is we have over on this right-hand side, the ISPs that claim to be in your county. And they have reported where they have service and what type of services they have. So as I put my mouse over, say, CenturyLink, which is undoubtedly your favorite provider, we see that the red areas are where they have less than 25 meg down. The yellow is where they have less than 100 meg down. So CenturyLink is not currently providing anything that the NTIA would be interested in funding. They may upgrade, but what they have right now isn't terribly exciting. Then we can take a look at Charter. Well, Charter is, they've got some good quality services, but they don't have them in a lot of places. Essentially, they've gone for the high population density areas and ignored everything else. And then we can take a look at CTC Telecom, mixed bag there, LS Networks, again, very centrally clustered. MyWave, which has a small spattering of good stuff and a large area of not so good stuff. TDS Telecom, and WindWave, which shows up as a tiny little green splotch in there. I don't know if you can see it or not, right around in here. So these are the players that you're going to have to be thinking about working with. And just on the basis of this, we would think that it probably is a good idea to start talking to Charter. It is probably a good idea to talk to LS Networks. And beyond that, there isn't really much in the way of folks that talk to in your county who can actually provide services throughout the county.
Well, I'm
So-
glad- I want to interrupt you for just a second, because we actually do have a really good partner at the table. So MyWave is here, and so they are a partner who's.
Glenn probably doesn't remember, but we actually worked together on our initial fiber project for Burns
Yeah,
6 years ago. So
Yeah.
Oh,
it's funny. Yeah, I saw
You'd,
your name. I was like, wait, I know Glenn, and I had to pull it back up. So
all
yeah.
right. Well, if I recall that you were going from a fixed wireless to a fiber deployment back then.
Yep. That's, if you zoom in on Burns, you'll see where we've got fiber on the map there. But yeah, we've been building out our fiber to the home here. So yeah.
Awesome.
All
we're
right.
on-
Well, the point being here is that I assume you have essentially the same model. So you've got a little splotch of fiber down in this area here, and your intention would be to expand that throughout the yard. All right. So it's good that you're at the table.
Absolutely.
Because being, from a 10,000-foot elevation viewpoint, you barely show up. But now I know who you are. So talk to this guy.
I'd love to cover all of that. That'd be great.
All right, so this is just a snapshot of where things stand. If you've got MyWave in there, this guy's a little bit aggressive in terms of putting out low-cost networks. So that's very much to your advantage. It's not going to be anything like Charter. Probably operational costs for deployment are going to be significantly lower through a company like MyWave than they would be through somebody like Charter. So 3 companies to talk to. Now, the next thing that we take a look at is we take a look at whether or not a fixed wireless design would work for the county, because that would be the cheapest possible solution. And the answer is not really. Because what happens is you've got this little tight cluster of high density areas in a valley where you already have services. And then once you move outside of that, you've got this beautiful terrain that is just not very conducive to much of anything. So a fixed wireless solution, as a worst case, you might be able to get redundant services where you kind of have them, but you're not really going to get much coverage. And it's a big county. These are 3-mile radiuses where you think you could probably get 100 symmetric. Beyond that, you'd be below the NTIA capacities that are required under the BEAD program. So then what we do is we take a look at some other factors, and we come up with a spreadsheet that takes about an hour and a half to train just to interpret everything on there. But it does have some characteristic elements that are important to understand. Basically, what you're looking at, we did 6 models, starting out with fixed wireless, and then we add fiber.
Glenn, can you zoom in a little bit? We're on a big screen, but that's like tiny to read. So if you can kind of make it a little bigger for those of us who are over 40, that would be awesome.
Okay.
There
How's
you go.
that?
There you go. Thank you,
Now
sir.
I'm lost on the page, so give me a minute here. All right, so basically what we did was we did 6 different studies. The first one was fixed wireless. We weren't putting any fiber in other than supporting the wireless equipment. And then we started adding fiber until everybody had fiber. So we did 6 different models from a cost perspective and performance perspective. And then we took a look at the costs of the projects for each one of these. And we started off with fixed wireless would come in relatively cheaply at about $2.5 million. And it goes all the way up. If everybody gets fiber, you're looking at $63 million. So there's quite a spread in terms of what the projected cost would be for various deployments. So given that we know the range, one of the other things we can start looking at is exactly how much money can you anticipate from BEAD? And we have the data for basically every county in the country in terms of the unserved and underserved. We know how many unserved and underserved locations there are within the state of Oregon. And we can calculate what percentage of your county is compared to the entire state. And from that, knowing how much money the state has, we can calculate what a equitable share would be. And that comes in terms of looking at a 0 point here. So if you're to the left of this, all right, then the blue is without the match and the red is with the 25% match. We can see here there's surplus funds left on the table. Here, there's just a little bit left over, and now we start saying you need more money than you're going to be getting on a proportional basis. So our sweet spot is somewhere around here. And in terms of the actual models, what does that mean? Let's see. Should I try to zoom this one too? All right, so
if you can't, you know, if I could interject, so since I'm an ISP, right, in my other life, this is I mean, other than the mapping, which is mind blowing, this is the single coolest thing out there because it shows you your ROI profitability tolerance basically for what you're going to build. And so, you know, when I was looking at, say, Wheeler County, building fiber in Wheeler County, you know, we did months of analysis to try and figure out, is this going to be sustainable, right? This does all the work for you. It is an astounding product. I love this thing. So, you know, whether it's MyWave, which, you know, since they're here, we would love for them to be, you know, take the lead because they seem to be a great partner, or another ISP that you have to recruit to come in here, you can actually demonstrate as a county that this will be profitable if you follow this model, right? This is huge. So Glenn and Nancy are geniuses. I'll turn it back over to you.
Hey, Glenn, this is Justin. I had a quick question about the models that you're using there. I know some of the restrictions on grant funding is restricting that to licensed fixed wireless. Is that how yours is built, or?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Basically, what had to happen once the BEAD program hit is that we couldn't use the low cost unlicensed anymore.
Right.
So that basically dramatically increased the cost.
And so everybody, and just so everybody here also understands that licensed fixed wireless is reduced to the people who, well, other than the CBRS ban, the 3.65 ban, licensed fixed wireless people are going after the license leases from the FCC to be able to transmit on those frequencies. So as an example, with the 3.65 gigahertz range, they took these licenses and auctioned them off. If somebody who won that, like they put money up and said, I want to buy the license for Harney County, and it's $100,000 is what their bid was, and that was accepted. If they are not using it, then other people can use it. But if they decide they want to use those frequencies, then it's a little complicated in there, but it's not like everybody can go after building a wireless network. You have to hold the licenses or get permission from the people that hold the licenses, or in that specific case, they have to be not using them in order to allow them for open use. So there are some restrictions in there. Just, I don't want everybody thinking that everybody can just go for the broadband funding, that everybody can just go and throw up wireless network and away you go. There are license concerns that are going to put some constraints on that, but yeah.
There's another set of constraints as well. If you see that fixed wireless is a good solution and an affordable solution, and you really don't care about BEAD, then you can put in an unlicensed solution, which is going to save a hell of a lot of money. So that's an option to always think about, especially where you do have the captive ISP that will have that discussion with you. And you could, in principle, depending on how the state rules work, that could be equivalent to an in-kind 25% match. So a lot of ways to play the game. But assuming that we're working on...
Can you also zoom in quite a bit so we can see that better on the screen over here?
Yeah, this is going to be unwieldy because there's a lot of content on this screen, so I'm going to get lost again. So here we have in this section here, these are the cost structures that we put in there. All of these numbers can be changed and probably will be changed as you move forward with anybody. But these are the numbers that we extracted for the county from sources in the county. And you can expect serious inflation when the BEAD program hits. And if the state is smart and they would develop a workforce development program where they're training fiber installers, you may have that thing cut in half. So there's a whole bunch of ways these numbers can change, and these are going to impact dramatically the amount of fiber that you can put into the county. Let's see, I've got a I'm gonna have to unzoom a little bit here, else I'll never be able to get control.
Can I stop for a second? Does Harney County have licensed fixed wireless?
So within the 3.65 band, AT&I, they're actually, the closest presence they have is just across the border in Nevada. They picked up the licenses for this area for the 3.65 band. They haven't been using them. Nobody else bid on them. That wasn't something we were gonna be able to just throw money at, because, I mean, we were gonna go fight with the big guys on that. So that was something we decided we weren't gonna participate in, but AT&I picked up the majority of the licenses for, in fact, I believe all of the licenses for Harney County for those frequencies. I'll just say it that way, because there's a portion that's not.
What is it, 3 dot what?
3.65 gigahertz. It's, if you look at CBRS, is that Citizens Band Radio System. The CBRS band is what I was referring to with
Okay.
that. There may be other bands that are still auctionable out there for fixed wireless. That's just the most common one that people have been using, so.
Yeah, and one of the concerns about the unlicensed wireless is generally it's supposedly going to have a lot of interference. When we look at your particular county, there's nothing out there to cause interference. So from my perspective, even though it doesn't help you, the FCC is
They don't have the ground scatter issue that say Camp Sherman does with all the trees, so.
no, I don't. Well, I
And
was
there's-
counting sheep in the overhead photos, but that's about as far as I got.
Or as
All
my husband would say, you can see someone coming from miles away.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yep.
All right, now, given the cost structure that's sitting out there right now, assuming that we can spend every allocated dollar that we would expect, you're gonna get at best 54% coverage, assuming an equal allocation. But there is some good news in there in spite of that. All right, so what we're projecting right now is that the estimated state allocation toward the county is going to be about $6.5 million. The match is going to be about 1.5, and that means that your total project available funds is about 8.1 million. All right, so that would put you somewhere in one of these models here, and those models are kind of icky in terms of the net coverage that you can afford to get.
That's a technical term, Glenn, icky.
Yeah, that's spelled I-C-K-E-Y. So anyway, though, the story doesn't stop there. One of the other things we took a look at is what is the county thought of from a federal high cost perspective. And what we have here, those red blotches in there, every one of those is either an NTIA high cost area as defined by the NTIA or a socially vulnerable community. These are high priority for funding, and they mean you're going to get extra dollars. Our estimate is that instead of getting about 6.5, you're probably going to get somewhere between 10 and 12 million. That dramatically changes how far you can go in terms of coverage, and that probably can bring you up into the 80-85% range. And most of that would be fiber rather than fixed wireless. Now, this is something that there are certain folks in the country can actually see this, and it's very likely that the state of Oregon is not on that list. So this is pointing to one of the strategies that you have to employ. Educate the state, show them this. This means you have a priority. It's the squeaky wheel theory. We relegated this project to more politics than technology, because this is a very important factor in the state's allocation of funds, and the NTIA is going to be watching this like a hawk. If you get this in front of the state NTIA liaison, they're going to basically make the state give you guys extra attention. And that is very, very important. Now, what we're also basically looking at, go ahead.
I need to stop for a second, because that's a really important point. When do we bring this information to the state?
Now. There are,
Just last
I
week.
think you start advocating with your elected officials at the state level, and also communicate with the Oregon Broadband Office and say, we have this rapid design study that demonstrates that we are a high cost, socially vulnerable community. What are you guys going to do to make sure that those areas are covered?
There was in the initial framework, it was like 4 years ago, I think, for the broadband projects. I did see in the initial design framework, there was a lot of attention paid to rural communities where they knew that it was all going to cost a lot more than trying to do it in the cities to cover that percentage of population and stuff. So I know there was, even in the framework at the beginning, people have been talking about it, which is a good thing, but I think all the people at the broadband office are aware of it, but it probably is not
But,
gonna
but
hurt
we,
for
we
the
as
most
Harney
rural
County
counties
have
to do
not
it.
had this level of understanding before and have not begun to educate, inform, and advocate for this at all. And this is exactly what we need. We needed something more than us saying,
Yeah, we need it.
we really need it, you know?
Well, you really need it.
Yeah, there you go.
Step
All right,
one,
now,
it's
another factor on the state's allocation, a portion of that allocation is dedicated to high-cost areas. And the state's not supposed to spend it anywhere else. So another reason to get this information in front of the state right now. Make sure that they don't accidentally allocate it elsewhere.
Glenn, could you uncheck the socially disadvantaged and just show the high cost real quick?
This is, hang on, I'm gonna have to bring up an
Or is that a
application
slide?
for that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Don't right now. I'm sorry. That was a selfish thing there, but.
No, it won't take long. Let me just get to the right application
So
here.
Glenn, while you're doing that, if I could interject, so one of the things that we're struggling with a little bit, but it's evolving at the broadband office. That's why we haven't talked about it much here yet. But initially, Nick Batts, the head of the broadband office, stated in the listening sessions that their intention was to serve every unserved address in Oregon first before they spent $1 on underserved. And, when you draw hard lines, I mean, so if you're passing underserved, you're not allowed to serve. I mean, all these questions. And, we talked about, I talked about after that listening session up in Central Oregon, talked about the issue of spending money on hunting cabins. I use that as an example because we had actually already done a full engineering plan for Morrow County with their broadband, so that we knew exactly what it would cost. I mean, full engineering plans, not it went beyond a rapid design study, was the whole thing. Exactly what it would cost to build to every address in Morrow County with fiber. And there were some of them that were hunting cabins that were 3 miles up a canyon, a rock canyon, that somebody used 4 days out of the year. And, and the cost was $250,000 or more. So you do the math, we can literally use up all $680+ million on hunting cabins and not actually move the bar anywhere. When we show maps like this and we say, listen, these are real families, these are real people, these are real occupied houses. This is where it's all high cost. This is where we should be spending our money. That is powerful, right? So that's why I love this. If you can't tell, I'm a fan of the rapid design study.
So I think too, one of the things that you can start, so we can talk with Seth, who is Seth Thompson, who is the Oregon Broadband Office representative for this area. We can, on the next meeting where Crystal has her BEAD meeting, that's another, opportunity to share this with her or via email. And then also get on the phone with your elected officials and have them start being loud. So, all right, back to you.
Now, all right, so he asked, what are the NTIA high cost areas? Everything's shown in red. Then where are your socially vulnerable communities? Everything else. So, yeah. So this is, here's the data. And we can also look at this in terms of how expensive is it going to be to get to these areas? These areas in red, they're typically 20 to 30 miles or more away from the nearest reliable broadband. So that's pointing out to that you're going to have to do something significant in terms of middle mile. to get to those locations. So that's a dynamic picture rather than a fixed slide that I was showing you. But that, the data is the data. I mean, I can't fix that. I mean, that's the way it is.
It's really interesting too that most of these programs are not funding middle mile.
Correct.
But they will fund middle mile to connect last mile. So if you roll the middle mile into the last mile proposal, you say the only way to get there, then you can generally get some attention, and that's the way to do it. So we know that there are middle mile gaps in our county, and how do we solve that problem? We have to roll that into solving real life problems for real life. And, pragmatically, if you're an elected official at the state or federal level, you want to solve.
Asleep, but geez, there's no reason to do that.
So you get votes. I mean, that's what, so that's why, none of, because it's not sexy to do middle mile, even though the whole country needs a lot of middle mile. It didn't get you votes to do middle mile. So we have to be creative in how we approach these middle mile problems that we've got so that we're rolling them in where it makes it attractive for them to go, oh yeah, you're going to actually hit these 10 farms, that otherwise have nothing, can't do precision irrigation, can't do precision ag. They can't do any of that without broadband. Their kids have to ride a bus for 4. I mean, the whole story we all know, right? That's why this is really helpful. So, all right, Glenn, sorry.
That's all right. I'll take the enthusiasm anytime. All right, now, when you have an ISP in hand, like the one you have in hand right now, one of the things they're going to kind of need to know is where the heck are all these actual people? And so this is a map that actually shows the structures and where they are within the county. And every one of these dot clusters should relate to a pre-existing structure. Now, this may be a single location. We can't discriminate with this data set between, say, a garage and a barn, but there's somebody there. And so this would allow a prospective ISP to get a sense for, exactly where the heck are these potential connection points and how the heck am I going to get to them? Now, no data set is 100% accurate, but this will give a pretty good picture overall. So this covers your entire county, the areas that require services. And it's the same base map concept here in terms of a house. We can either look at it as just the unserved counts or the percent unserved. So you've got a pretty good picture from the ISP's review point of view. They can use this to actually start thinking about routing and how they're going to get from point A to point B. So this is just something that, amongst other boring things that we do, we give that information to the county. The county itself isn't necessarily going to need that. But if somebody's doing project planning, engineering studies, that's going to save them a ton of time.
Glenn, we've got a quick question in the room. Yes.
Yep.
Hi, Glenn. This is Brandon McMullen. I'm the county planning director. Hey, and maybe Bryce can help us out with this too. If I heard you right, the data set incorporates structures. Did you work from a local data set?
No.
Okay.
No, this is a Microsoft data set. It's derived from satellite imagery through their Bing map photography analysis.
So, and Bryce may be able to help out a little bit more than I will. It's his data that he manages. But our address layer, our GIS address data is fairly accurate based on where.
Okay, then by all means use that. That's going to be much, much, much better. We don't always have a GIS department, so we don't always know what they know. So this at least gives a start. But if you've got a GIS database for all of your parcels, that's what you need to use.
Yeah, we have all the addresses mapped out in the cabins and commercial buildings and whatnot.
All right. Now, one other thing that's helpful for the ISP. Here's a list of every unserved broadband serviceable location in the county. And the information basically is these are the location IDs. This is a census block. This is the maximum download speed of their reliable broadband. So what we're talking about here is they're going to have to think in terms of trying to get to 1,435 locations. This location information ties directly back to the FCC fabric. And for a county, you can also get a CostQuest license that'll give you the latitude, longitude, and address. We are prohibited by our license from giving you that. We got it, but we can't show it to you, or else we'd have to do something drastic and make your memory drop off. So this is what we can provide to the ISPs. Also, this essentially is what they want to be bidding on, every one of these locations. So that information is also presented to you in support of your conversations and ultimate ISP bid activity.
Hey, Glenn, that address location that you just showed a second ago, is that pulling from FCC, the broadband fabric? Is that where that's
Yes.
coming?
Yep,
Okay.
location ID is what we're permitted to show you.
I can appreciate that because I've been doing it manually. So thank you.
Okay, now,
Okay, just a sec, Glenn. So how this is used in other counties is that the county can decide to provide any ISP or other partner with access to this tool. So it's basically up to the county. So if you all wanted to use this as a way to move forward and the county says yes, then that's something that can happen. He's currently pleading with the commission right now.
I saw that.
okay, so actually I started off with the recommendations and I'll just finish with the recommendations. This is actually just a downloaded document, but it's a fairly simple concept. That's the good part. You basically, if you've got a tremendous percent, you got 34% of your community in socially vulnerable communities. And the balance of it is high cost. You're basically averaging about 0.6 households per square mile. That makes you incredibly rural. The USDA cutoff tends to be 6 per square mile. So these are factors that are positive in the sense of getting money. And unfortunately, I told you that there are only 2 ISPs that have modest performance capacities, and I didn't say MyWave, so I apologized. We'll add MyWave to the list. But basically, you want to talk to Charter, LS Networks, and MyWave. The problem is they're all localized, very, very tight clusters of good quality service. The area cost of fiber installation, based on what we saw, is exorbitant. What we would typically be seeing, say for something on aerial, is you'd probably be in an area like this where you don't have forest fire concerns, you should be able to do it for somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 a mile. We got quoted at 70. All right, so those are things that you want to manage, is the actual cost of the fiber installations. And when somebody says it's going to cost you this much, tell them to prove it. The key things here are that the NTIA has covered 3/4 of your county as high cost, and the balance is socially vulnerable. Now, what we view this as is that you should be targeting about an 80% coverage rate. We think that you can get at least 50% fiber coverage with the allocation that you should be getting. And the issues, as we're viewing it, is not so much technical as political. The technology is what it is. It's got costs and all that sitting in a spreadsheet. But what the county has to do is very simple. Start your conversations with the ISPs to get them to see that financially it is viable after construction to be supporting the county. What we generally have as a sort of a rule of thumb is to drop a truck and a technician and their spares into an area like this is $250,000 a year. That means you need a lot of subscriptions to pay for that maintenance that is ongoing, just the truck and the tech. And that generally requires a minimum of about 400 subscriptions. You've got potential for something like 4 times that. Their take rate is going to be very important. So one of the side issues on that is make sure that your citizens actually want broadband and are actually willing to pay for it. That's going to be a major factor from the ISP's perspective. It's one thing to build a network using federal dollars, but once that money has been used for construction, they have to maintain the network. In order to encourage these ISPs to participate, the county has to be able to tell them that you've done some homework here and that you can guarantee some number of subscribers. And please make sure that number is in excess of 400. 400 is kind of like the break-even point. Anything above that is actually, they might make money, and they do want to make money.
Yeah,
And then,
we got a quick question.
If you're looking at all of the vulnerable populations, how can you ensure that they're able to afford connectivity?
That's a conversation around the Affordable Connectivity Program that we're
Okay.
gonna definitely cover in the conversation today
Okay.
too.
yeah, and 34% of your population is sitting in those areas. So that leaves another 60-some% that are not in that position. So it's kind of a balancing act that you can work with the county and with the ISPs. Some will pay more, some will pay less, but you need that base of at least 400 normal paying customers to maintain a network going forward in this area. And then a critical thing, like I said at the beginning, starting now, start lobbying at the state level to make sure the state is aware that you are NPI, a high cost and socially vulnerable community. So from the technology point of view, folks like MyWave, Charter, LS Networks, they know what they can do. The issue is, can you get enough money in so they can actually do their job? And you should be able to do that with the information that we provided to you. So I think that's quite a quick summary. There's a lot of other stuff here, but I'll let you discover that on your own.
Thank you very, very much.
So what do you guys think?
My little simple mind, when you hear you're gonna get a rapid design study, envision a document. This is awesome. This is just what we needed, Never had this level of analysis done for us before in previous technical assistance we've received years earlier. And so I'm excited about it. How do we access it? Who accesses it?
So you have access to this. We'll get you the access codes and all that sort of thing. And then if you do want to share it with other partners, there will need to be some signing of documents, basically.
Okay.
So,
And you can help advise on all that?
Yep.
All right. Any other comments from people?
Yeah, I'm going to the, getting the legislators engaged with this particular project. Are you working directly with, the legislators or?
no, that's something that needs to be done so not us as the consultants, but
Okay.
like you all as the
Okay.
representatives of the region. We
Okay.
just, we don't have any team.
Yeah, okay.
So,
I'm just wondering,
Well-
well, we have Mahonia Affairs, and I just sent them an email a while ago that helps with the districts in Salem. And I don't know, I asked him if he could help us because, help Harney County with this project. Or would they have to contract, or
Yeah.
would Harney County have to contract with them individually? But they do really good work. I mean,
Well, one thing I can do at very low cost is get our state legislators on a Zoom meeting, for this topic, where I feel comfortable introducing it and you guys maybe can assist with the technical on getting the maps and some of the things and helping to answer questions. That would be the first start, is
Yeah.
at least, Senator Finley, Rep Owens, and maybe one or two others if, and then see how we take it further, and not wait too long.
yeah, so thinking of going further and strategizing, I know that it's a completely different topic, but trucking and transport in the Rose Quarter in Portland is critical for moving product from Eastern Oregon to get it through to the different transportation availability that goes through the Rose Quarter. So that's where Greg Smith has been really supportive of other projects with other legislators in outside of his district in the Portland area. So the question is who would we get involved? What can Harney County's broadband, if Harney County had broadband, how will that benefit other areas outside of Harney County and getting the support of people that are outside of Harney County?
You know,
Maybe that's a joke, but-
Representative Smith is really brilliant at finding creative ways to make those ties. So if we can get some of his time, walk him through this and say, how can we pull this together, you know, in the sense that you were just talking about, where it's bigger than just the broadband, but it's the impact on the state.
Yeah.
And, yep, go ahead.
Isn't there some fiber that's coming through Seneca to connect the birds?
I'm trying to look at the
So,
map.
on the
I think
last-
there's some planned five.
Yeah, the last RDOF had an award for
Right.
the guys out of John Day, but that's a wireless network coming down to Seneca.
Okay.
And then they had an award doing the same coming over to Ventura from the east side. There's been talk for years of bringing fiber all the way down. It's as far as I know, it's still talk. It's
Okay.
nothing. LS estimated at 9 million just to put that one piece of fiber in. And so like, this is, you know, and that was years ago now before all the inflation. So I'm sure it's even higher now. But to my knowledge, that was the only awarded project on it. I'm sure people are still seeking it, but yeah.
Glenn and Nancy, you don't necessarily need to stick around for the next 15 minutes. We'll be talking about some other stuff, but thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
It's very good.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And we will, so the other thing too is that we will be setting up more in-depth training for your staff, whichever staff you want to help drive this. I'm assuming GIS, maybe planning, maybe economic development, whoever you want to have in the room. The next step will be to set up another meeting with Glenn and Nancy, and they'll kind of go through it more in depth. Now, I will tell you right now that like, I have seen these dozens and dozens of times. Every time I see them, I learn something new. So it is like not a quick, like, I've got it all right away. It's kind of just, you know, gotta walk through it.
There's
But
so much information.
yeah, there's so much
It
information,
is-
so.
it's astounding.
We only have about 15 minutes left, so I think that we're probably gonna skip the full detail on the BEAD proposal, that we're volume 1 that we put together for you. And we can talk a little bit about kind of the money that's coming down, and then also if we have a few minutes, just briefly touch on the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP. Sounds good to you, Joe?
I think that's great.
Okay.
So I'll say this, you got the documents. There's in bold, so there's not like a summary of comments from us or recommendations. You have to look through, but when you just glance at a page, it's in bold and it says RPP comment. You know, so then what follows is what we're suggesting on both the rest of the notice of proposed rulemaking and also on the BEAD volume 1. And I would mention that right after this meeting,
Yes, at 10 o'clock.
literally right after this meeting, the state broadband office BEAD coordinator is hosting a call with the NTIA. And it's an open call. She's not going to mute anybody. That's what she said, although some people might need to be muted. Where we can ask questions of the NTIA about the BEAD proposal volume 1 that we summarized for you guys. And Crystal Stone's intent, she's our state BEAD coordinator. Okay, she works out of the broadband office. She's really bright. Her intent is to answer questions in advance so that we don't make comments about things that they don't have a choice about. So some of the things that are in the BEAD proposal volume 1 are mandatory. They don't have a choice. So we don't need to waste our time and their time making comments on those things. there are some things that they have some latitude on. We can find that out. It's gonna be an open forum right after this meeting, so.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants
I
to
don't
be
know.
involved in that.
Is this
love to have you.
room, can we stay here? Because
Yes, I've got it till noon.
okay, so we could actually we can join the call,
That
and
would
put
be
it up on
Yeah.
the screen for everybody who, so,
Well, we were gonna meet with you guys if they show up, some of the folks to talk about some other stuff. And that if they show up,
okay, yeah.
then.
I wasn't sure what time that was. I thought that was later in the day.
Well, I was thinking more like 10:30-ish.
And
or 10.
which subject?
This is.
I know.
But I was expecting, for instance, I thought Judge Hart would be here at this meeting today.
economic
Who knows what's happening with people's schedule today.
Uh-huh.
But what that was is we were gonna have, I invited fairgrounds,
Okay.
Justice Center.
For some reason, I thought that was
about the
later in the
different
day, but
projects.
that
Kids
works.
Club, folks that, to just introduce them to you
Perfect.
and you to hear whether it's your bailiwick or not, just.
That sounds great.
whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they'll show, but they
Okay.
were invited.
We're-
Some said they would come.
Pretty doggone flexible.
Yes,
Right.
very.
And
flexible.
this, so the state, the OBO, Oregon Broadband Office, has a monthly call for the county's kind of government official side of the house. And they recently changed the time where it doesn't work very well for elected officials at the county level, I can tell you that. They moved them from Fridays to Wednesdays. And so at the last one, there were only like 4 people on the call, Joe, me, and the
It's just
person
like-
facilitating.
like
So it was-
40 people
It was
here.
kind of like, and I had told them, I said, this is usually not gonna
Wednesdays
work
are not
out for
good, yeah.
people. But if I had been more prepared, we could have had quite a lengthy discussion.
Yeah.
Because it was just the 4 of us, but
We do.
between Joe, Rachel, me, and their staff, we really do try to cover these things, and I couldn't do any of it without them. So I hope you are gonna think about this rapid design study and kind of how cool it is. I think it's really gonna be able to help focus our rationale and our advocacy and our work and allow ISPs to see what they can do and want to do, and see if, yeah, I appreciate it very much. Do you know what you're planning to brief tomorrow at the county court meeting?
Well, we were gonna talk to Susan. and
Okay,
coordinate that a
we can
little
talk
bit
about
today.
that. All right, good.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think anyone on the screen might have any questions or?
Well, we just
Comments?
got just a couple of minutes here left. I wanted to cover a
Oh,
couple
yeah,
of things if we
okay.
can.
Sure.
So what to know, so in terms of timing, so there's basically 3 pots of funding that we're paying attention to. There's the Broadband Technical Assistance Program, or BTAP. That comes from the Universal Service Fund, and that is, they've been saying it's gonna come out for a long time, but now that the broadband fund is out for comment, that's the rulemaking. Once that's closed, our assumption is that they'll then be able to at least technically open up these projects. And so that has another, that's another
It's the NPRM is the 26th.
26th. So once that hits, we think we will be able to see the BTAP opening up. And then ARPA, or what they also, ARPA is the funds behind the broadband deployment program. So that is the BDP, that's the first tranche of infrastructure funding, it's $157 million. And then BEAD will come out sometime next year. And BDP will probably come out sometime at the beginning of the year. They may open it up before the end of the year, because, everyone likes to give us opportunities to work really hard up until Christmas.
Great time to write a grant.
Yeah, super. It's like, that always happens. Anyways, so what we're recommending right now is that the BDP fund, $157 million, it is a smaller pot of funding. It is a more competitive pot of funding because of that. And so our recommendation, especially talking through with like our colleagues with Glenn and Nancy, is that that communities look at smaller projects, like in the 300 to 400 passings, which means per house, basically.
Out here, that's like 90 million. No, I'm just kidding.
And then, so middle mile and smaller projects. So just because there's $688 million in coming down through BEAD doesn't mean you all are gonna get all the money that you need. So we're never gonna ignore or leave money on the table. So for the BTAP, the Technical Assistance Project, we're gonna recommend that you all get some more funding in for continuing this work. You may want to, and I'd have to go back and look at draft rules, but there may wanna look at supporting the efforts around local data, because there's a big component around that with BEAD. There is also, this is where I'm not sure that the ACP program, so while it is great that it's out there, it is challenging to sign up for. And so maybe having some sort of navigator, if they allow that within the BTAP application.
I'm just laughing because we've spent 4.5 months trying to get done and I literally just got it a week ago.
Congratulations.
So we are officially, that was part of, that's, we're meeting later to go over it because we just filed our election with USAC. So we've been working on it for months and months and
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
yeah.
And what is
so-
that you discussed? Sorry.
That's the
Affordable
the affordable
And this is for,
connectivity.
it's basically for qualifying households, basically poverty levels,
Okay.
that you can get a subsidy of $35 per month, basically, with qualified, internet service providers. That may be going up to $75 a month in high-cost areas, which would be particularly useful for Harney County.
That's why I was asking to see that map, by the way.
Yeah,
Was
exactly.
Because the NTIA is supposed to be revising their map of high-cost areas. And they haven't, I'm looking forward to hearing from somebody from NTIA to see if they have a timeline for that of when it's gonna be available, because that directly impacts all of the programs and it impacts the grants. Being part of the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, is one of the very first things in being able to write a grant proposal for all of this funding, is you have to be, as an ISP, we have to be in this program. So this is the very first hurdle
Done,
to
good job.
even be eligible to apply for the grants.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is, hearing where that high cost is will absolutely affect anybody's grant proposals and the economics and their
Yeah.
whole package, so.
So do I understand that if you didn't have that, then Harney County wouldn't be able to apply for any grant money?
No,
And
no.
My Wave wouldn't be able to.
Oh, my
Yeah.
way, okay.
It's yeah, and I don't know that there's a requirement for anybody outside of ISPs for ACP. That's an
No, I don't
interesting,
think so.
unless, if a
Okay.
municipality is doing it, I don't know how that works,
I
but
have no idea how that works.
but as an ISP, we have to do this in order to be able
Okay.
to apply. So
So just kind of keeping our eyes on all these pots of funding for you all, and just two quick kind of notes I'll drop here, and we probably will just need to talk about this a little bit more at our next meeting, is what is the county's role in applying for funding? So there's kind of 3 different buckets, from least heavy lift to most heavy lift. Most heavy lift is, as a county, we want to own the infrastructure and operate it. And yeah, that's what most places say. And then the other one is like, so then we want to be more passive and just let our ISP partners come to us and ask for letters of support. Or you can utilize the rapid design study and say, hey, you can put out information and say, these are the areas that we want to prioritize, and you can do like a request for proposals or a request for qualifications and ask for that information to come back. So you can determine who it is that you actually want to work with. Now, that gets into procurement issues if you have taxpayers' money involved and that sort of stuff, but you can incentivize partners by providing some of the match, in addition to the letters of support and that sort of thing. The other thing is that we would recommend, and maybe this can be a sub-working group potentially, is doing an ACP outreach campaign, and that's the Affordable Connectivity Program. Now, the entities that are going to be really important to engage around that are your libraries and your schools. And so those are the folks that we probably need to pull in for a separate meeting to talk about their ability to do the ACP campaign.
I don't know if you'd want to also connect the local community health partnerships,
Yeah.
because.
True, that'd be
that's
right.
Yep.
That's perfect.
And that could be another, it's like it'd be a small amount, but potential share funding you could potentially apply
Oh.
through that if it's 51% of OHP members that would be impacted.
That's
This
good.
is my new employee, Tori.
She's great, wow. Like, who are you?
Yeah.
Where did you come from?
Yeah, yeah, Tori Sinet, this is her first day. She comes from Grant County.
Awesome.
Outstanding.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, all of those ideas we bring to, because, you know, again, you all know the nuances of your communities more than we do and how people get information and who gets information. And it's just also sometimes it depends on who's easiest to work with.
Because the LCHIP, the local community health partnerships, have that piece called the social determinants of health,
Mhm.
and being connected for some of these very remote or poverty level, you know, families is.
One of the
Very
things that
important for
ISPs
that.
really struggle with in promoting the ACP is, and it's the same thing that government struggles with, is people don't trust them. And so having a school or a library or your health clinic, helping people to get connected with the ACP program and say, listen, this is really good for you. This can be transformative for you and your family and your household, you know, with your present circumstances. It really is a good thing. And so that's why, because, you know, we've done everything as an ISP in my other role, and people are still like, it seems like a gimmick. I'm like, no, it's just free money. All you have to do is sign up, and they won't do it.
All you have to do is sign up. It's
Oh, it's not,
an easy
yeah. It's a bit of a
Right.
challenge.
So that's why you have to really engage some folks who
Yeah.
have the time and energy to help be navigators for that. So,
People have been successful, communities have been successful and had navigators, whether that's at the library or at the schools or
Yeah.
both, or someplace to point people.
so we are almost out of time. So are there any last minute burning questions? Okay. Awesome. Well, for those of you guys on the Zoom call, thank you very much for joining us today. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Will do. Thank you, Rachel.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for the information.
Right. So